So the Israelis decided to take a little detour, a little time out from their bombing campaign in Gaza and go and bomb Syria. I mean, we feel special, don't we, about that, right? That the Israelis remembered to bomb Syria. So here's what they did. As usual, the Israelis, they can't fight the Israelis. They're too afraid to confront Hezbollah or Hamas or Iran or Syria face to face, man to man. So they go man to woman, man to building, right? They go by air and drop their bombs on civilians and run away. So they do the same thing here, right? They went and bombed the airports. These are not military airports. They're the regular civilian international airports, the two largest airports, one in Syria in the capital, and then in Aleppo, which is the second largest city in Syria. This is not the first time they do this, of course. And they do it very, in a really vindictive way. It's not like they just come and drop a bomb or send a missile. What they do is they specifically bomb each runway in the airport in equal increments, okay? So basically that means if the airport is, if the runway is 100 meters long, for example, they're going to bomb it every 25 meters to make sure you cannot use it, right? So that you can't use it from this side, you can't use it from that side, small aircraft, large aircraft, all gone. Not to mention that, of course, they could kill people, obviously. The airports have reopened bit by bit. Now you have flights going from Damascus to Beirut since a while now. They're going to Jordan as well, as Syria is being brought back into the fold with Arab countries. You have more and more air traffic now finally resuming. It's not like it used to be, but it is slowly resuming. So the thing is, the reason the Israelis did this is because they knew in a few hours the Iranian foreign minister is going to come and visit Damascus. And they were just giving a press conference, him and the Syrian foreign minister, Faisal Mekdad. And so this was sort of a message from Israel, like, we are angry at what's happening in Gaza. I mean, once again, it's not like the Israelis have any right to be angry. They're the oppressors, but, they just wanted to kind of stick it to Iran. That's what it was about. And send them a message. Now, obviously, we don't know whether the foreign minister of Iran was going to come by air or by not. These things are not announced, but the visit was certainly planned, and there was a press conference. So I don't know whether they came by land or otherwise, but it was very, they even admitted that this was the reason. And so, we go back to the dynamic that I was talking about before, where you have the Golan Heights here, the Syrian Golan Heights. I wonder if the BBC even mentioned that they're illegally occupied. Nope, there's no legend. I mean, again, this is something that children learn. When you make a map and you put colors on the bloody map, you explain what those colors mean, otherwise they're meaningless. And so the BBC, just like all the other media outlets, and it gets worse, they're too afraid to upset Israel, right? They're too scared. They can't do their jobs because they've got Israel hounding them. So, they don't tell you that this is illegally occupied. This area here, the Golan Heights, they're Syrian, and Israel is illegally occupying them. But in any case, going back to my main point, this war is different than the usual incursions, quote unquote, that Israel does in Gaza, because this time Iran is much more powerful. Syria is sort of back on its feet and definitely did fire on Israel at the positions in the Golan Heights, which are Syrian anyway. And then also from South Lebanon, so to the north for the Israelis, you've got Hezbollah also firing at the same time. So, the Israelis, they don't know which way to look. And yeah, it's definitely making them angry. So, I don't know what to say here, except that they are, this is, I don't know what to call it. It's barbarian, really. It's barbaric what they're doing to go and blow up the two main airports. They know that these airports are for civilians. They know that the Latakia port, for example, which is another target they often use on the Mediterranean Sea, they know that this has nothing to do with weapons from Iran. And even if it did, the Russians don't go bombing Kiev International Airport just because the West, like 30 NATO countries are sending weapons, and it's actually 50 countries supporting Ukraine. They would lose it if the Russians did that, but it's okay for Israel to do it. Of course, everything is permitted and permissible and acceptable for Israel. So at the same time, the Royal Navy have decided to send a couple of ships to intimidate Hamas or try and intimidate them. Again, it's this posturing that we talked about last time. You know, that you have the Americans who've sent the USS Gerald Ford, and I was joking, although half joking, I should say, that the U.S. Navy should be careful, you know, that the Israelis don't mistake their ship for the USS Liberty. Otherwise, the Israelis might try and sink it again, which is what they did in 1967. But you don't hear about that in the news because that's a chapter of history that is buried. Yes. And nor do you hear a lot about the King David Hotel bombing. So I'm once again very puzzled by this decision to send ships to the Mediterranean to try and, you know, support Israel. Who the hell is Israel? Can someone please explain why this is a foreign policy objective for the United Kingdom and the United States? Who the hell is Israel? What connection does Israel have to the average Joe in the US or the UK? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. The truth is that Israel is basically a military base. It's a wedge to drive between Arabs. I mean, just physically, geographically, this always warrants repeating. Okay, just give me a second. I just want to show you here. You should always have this image in your head. Okay, when we're talking about the Israelis, they are literally right in the middle of the Arab world. Okay, so you see, if we start at Oman, and you look there, over there's Morocco. Okay, so this is like one giant continuous landmass, same language, history, culture. You know, almost the same religion also. And then right in the middle, you have Israel. They just, you know, these Europeans, they just came and stuck this right in the goddamn middle just to crap all over the Middle East, because this is the juncture between Africa, Asia, and Europe. Okay, it's the junction. It's the most important point in the world, and always has been, right? In politics, it's the Middle East, and this is way before anyone cared about oil or anything like that. It's just always been the crossroads between three continents. So, you know, geographically makes sense. So they just come and slap it in there, and then they want to make you feel bad about, babies this and babies that. I will also get to that in a moment. These are just the same tactics that they used when 9/11 happened, you know, and everything afterwards. Like, they try to stir up emotions. They will bullshit and lie till the cows come home just to make people, consent, right, or acquiesce to these bombing campaigns, to the U.S. and the British armies, just, you know, pummeling and pulverizing and destroying and brutalizing people that live thousands of miles away for no reason, right? Except to make money and to occupy them. And you can see here, this is a good point that Glenn Greenwald made. You know, this IDF slogan that they've adopted, it really does borrow from George W. Bush's post 9/11 decree. Okay, so the IDF are the Israeli Defense Forces. You should really call them the Israeli Occupation Forces, so we'll just say IOF from now on. So their slogan is now, you either stand with Israel or you stand with terrorism. Oh man, this is really funny. Let me guess. They hate you because you're free? Yes? I think I know this speech. I've heard this one before. So look, I want to show you how batshit they have become in their rhetoric. Like, you guys really need to understand, and you probably realize this yourself, this war is different from the other Gaza wars, not only because of the resistance axis playing a much larger role, but also because of the rhetoric, right? They like, even before, they would always try and make it about, oh, Israel, the victim, oh, the poor Israelis. And now it's like, it's 10 times, 100 times worse, right? Like, we're just supposed to forget like 75 years of occupation. And even before they created Israel, how the Israelis were assassinating British officers and assassinating Jews who were against having a Zionist state, and killing Arabs and all this, the Haganah and Hashemir, who now are the IDF. You know, we're supposed to forget about all this terrorism and just act like they're victims. No, I'm sorry, I'm not buying it. I know my history.
What is the president's message to...
Okay, the pool should start leaving, and then we're going to take this last question.
So that's a White House
what is the president's
spokesperson.
Message to members of Congress who seem to be equating the Hamas terror attack with actions that were previously taken by Israel?
Say that one more time. Everybody's moving around. I apologize.
What is the president's message to members of Congress who seem to be equating the Hamas terror attack with actions that were previously taken by Israel?
Look, here's the thing, and which congressional members
Well, there have been some members of Congress who have called for a ceasefire, and they have not gone as far as backing the administration's call for support for Israel.
The tragedy, they called for a ceasefire. Oh, hang them! They're terrorists.
So look, I've seen some of those statements this weekend, and we're going to continue to be very clear. We believe they're wrong. We believe they're repugnant, and we believe they're disgraceful. Our condemnation belongs squarely with terrorists who have brutally murdered.
Repugnant and disgraceful. Man, you need to understand like how wild this is. Before, they would pretend, the Americans, and the Westerners, and even some of the Israelis would pretend like, oh, we want peace. We just want peace. Why do they hate us? They hate us because of our freedoms. They would pretend that they want peace and they want two states. Now it's just, fuck you. We want to bomb Gaza. You're a terrorist. You're repugnant.
Raped, kidnapped, hundreds.
No one was raped. That's a lie.
Hundreds of Israelis. There can be no equivocation about that. There are not two sides here.
I agree. There are not two sides in this story. The Israelis are oppressors and the Palestinians are the oppressed. Period. I agree.
There are not two sides. President Biden has been clear on where he has stood. You heard from him directly today. You heard from him also on Saturday on this.
Really? Biden has been clear about where he stands. No, he hasn't. He claimed that Hamas were beheading babies, and then as soon as his speech was over, the White House had to walk his own statement back because it's not true.
There's been multiple statements from this president, and he's taking action to provide additional support to ensure that Israel has what they need to defend themselves. All right.
Yeah, I mean, Morena in the chat says she's another Aunt Thomasina. yeah. Again, this is like you have people who, they and this is in the UK. It's the same thing, right? You've got people of color who just blindly repeat the propaganda of the British elites, the British political elite, or the US political elite. Just because they want to be as part of the master's house, like she gets to be the White House spokesperson, or Suella Braverman gets to be the Home Secretary. They've accumulated all this power and wealth and status, and they believe this crap even more than the presidents or the prime ministers themselves. Again, this is it's a common theme. I want to show you this Israeli lawmaker, and look what he says. I want you to look what he says now about the situation.
חיסול מוחלט של החמאס. ויש לזה מבחן מאוד פשוט, שבעזרת השם ילד לבד יוכל ללכת ברחוב הראשי של עזה, ילד יהודי, בלי שאיש יפגע בו, אז נדע שניצחנו. אם ככל שיהיה רחוב ראשי של עזה, אם לא. חיסול מוחלט.
Okay, so this is another common lie that you hear from the Israelis, that there's like a problem. They pretend and they claim that there's an issue between Jews and Palestinians, or Jews and Arabs, or Jews and Muslims. This is complete, utter bullshit. You've had Jews, you have Arabs, Christians, Muslims, living in this area. Literally, I mean, they come from this area, these religions and these peoples, living there for thousands of years without issue. The only time that the only time a problem actually arose is in 1948, when the Zionists, who are European settlers, European Jewish settlers from Europe, came to colonize Palestine. And they had started decades before that and made it into a Jewish ethno-state where, you have like white Jews on top, and then you have brown or Arab Jews, and then you have black Jews from Ethiopia, and then you have Palestinians who are like treated like they're not even, humans. So this idea that like there's a problem with like Jewish children cannot walk alone in Gaza, complete utter horseshit. You have Jewish people in Sheikh Jarrah and East Jerusalem, Palestinian Jews that Israel is evicting just because they're Palestinians. They don't even give a shit that they're Jewish. This is besides the point, right? Beside the point. I just want to point out that he's saying he wants to wipe out Gaza. He's saying like if there would even be a Gaza. Right? Like you have to understand something. The Israelis do not speak to the West the same way that they speak at home, or do not even speak to Arabs. Okay? The Israelis want you to believe like, oh, Israel is a victim. People hate them because they're anti-Semites. right? They claim especially like Arabs are anti-Semites, which is ridiculous because Arabs are Semites themselves. They claim that, they just want peace, and look at what they're doing in Gaza. Now they're saying that Hamas are ISIS and Hamas are Nazis. I mean, this is so dumb. Even if you don't like Hamas, this is just wrong. It's so intellectually bankrupt. I can't even, I don't even know where to begin. So these are the things that they say to the West, right? And they say, oh, we're a democracy. Now, when it comes to Palestinians and Arabs, they don't even bother saying this shit. They just bomb, kill, and take the land. That's it. There's no dialogue. There's no need for propaganda. They just kill them and take the land. That's it. Where's the proof? Look at the Palestinians. They live in ghettos. Gaza is a giant ghetto. You need to understand that. People do not willingly give up their land for European Jewish settlers and go live in a ghetto, whether that's in Jenin refugee camp in the West Bank, or it's in Gaza, or all the hundreds of thousands of Palestinians who had to flee in 1948, going into Syria, going to Jordan. You think people are just nuts? They just like randomly decided to leave and give up their homes. This is, I just want to point out the funny contrast here. Like, the Israelis, this is just bullshit that they feed the West so they can get weapons from America. That's it. Here's what the Israelis are doing, defending themselves. I mean, this is a joke. What I showed you, this is a joke compared to all the stuff I've seen today. I have seen so many awful things today. I mean, I don't even know where to begin. I will probably forget some of them because it's just too much. You need to understand what the Israelis are doing. The Israelis are not targeting Hamas. This is another phrase that they constantly use in the media. Oh, Israel hit Hamas targets. Oh, they always use this phrase to make it seem like Israel is very surgical and tactical and they know exactly where Hamas is. I want to ask you a question. Please, I beg you, just think about this. If the Israelis have Hamas targets, if the Israelis know where to find Hamas in every house and every tunnel, then how the fuck did they not know Hamas were coming on October 7th if they know where every Hamas target is? Someone is lying here. Someone is not telling the truth. They've been telling porky pies. The Israelis do not, in fact, know where Hamas is. They were taken completely by surprise on October 7th. Gaza has a vast network of tunnels, and they are just randomly bombing people. And how do I know this? Because here's the proof. The death toll is now 1,800 dead Palestinians. It's surpassed that already because this is from 2 hours ago, so it's probably more now. 1,800 Palestinians killed. So now you have more Palestinians that have been killed than Israelis, which was not true a few days ago for the first time. But of course, the Israelis always make sure that at the end of the day, you have more Palestinian casualties than Israeli casualties, just as a matter of policy. And I want to show you something here. I want to show you how surgical, and careful and tactical and delicate Israel is, right? So 1,800, the majority of those are women and children, the majority. Not just civilians, women and children. 352 women, 583 children. So more than 50% of the 1,800 people killed are women and children. There are 7,388 people wounded. I literally saw 2 journalists die today. I saw one of them die during a live stream, and the other one was blown in half by Israelis hitting South Lebanon. And I'll come back to that story because it's even worse than the first. I mean, I can't keep track. Each story is worse and more heartbreaking than the next. Apparently, all these people, all these women and children, and the journalists I just mentioned, they all work for Hamas. Apparently, right? I mean, either the Israelis are the sloppiest, pathetic and most incompetent army in the history of armies, that they are trying to hit Hamas, and yet they just keep murdering civilians every single time, every single war. Or they don't give a shit, and they are lying to you and lying to the world and bombing, recklessly, they without care. Right? As if, I mean, it's not like they have the right to bomb Gaza in the first place, but they are bombing on purpose civilians and then lying to you about it. So if Hamas are terrorists, what does that make the Israelis, who have warplanes, who have nuclear goddamn weapons, who have white phosphorus, which is banned, and they're using white phosphorus? This is confirmed by Human Rights Watch. If you want to cite a Western NGO, what does that make these Israelis then, who are able to kill civilians and are in fact killing civilians on a much larger scale with a wider array of weapons, with all these billions and billions in funding from the United States? What does that make Israel then? Either they are incompetent and they should not be doing anything in Gaza, or they are purposely killing civilians, and once again, they should not be doing anything in Gaza. By the way, the first possibility, being incompetent, is not an excuse under the Geneva Convention to just randomly kill civilians. So the Israelis now dropped leaflets this morning telling Gazans to leave their homes. Can you imagine you walk outside, or you're on your balcony, or you're in the park or something, or you're walking down the street, and a plane is dropping leaflets telling you to leave your home? They sent a message to the UN, right? Like as if, they're warning the UN, we're coming for dinner at 9, expect us. Like they just told the UN leave. They told the United Nations to leave from North to South Gaza, and they told 1.1 million Gazans to leave North to Gaza for South Gaza. Now, I mean, the idea, and this is the United Nations who said this, the idea that you can evacuate 1.1 million people in 24 hours, which is what the Israelis are ordering, right? Like some camp commandant, just like coming in and say, I order you to leave. You have 24 hours, hurry up. Just snapping their fingers at you. You cannot do this without incurring, grave human casualties, and causing harm to humans. And not to mention that trying to evacuate this fast, is bad enough. But not to mention the fact that the Israelis are bombing you while you're doing this. And that is what happened. The Israelis bombed people who were literally complying with their shitty orders. Okay, so once again, Israel ordered 1.1 million people to leave their homes. Some of them did that, and then Israel bombed them while they were leaving. I mean, again, they make Hamas sound like choir boys, right? And this is not the first war in Gaza. I've lost count. I've lost count. I think people in Gaza have lost count. It's awful. It's awful. This is terrorism on another scale. It's something that is so deranged. I just don't know how to describe it. Words fail me. Words truly fail me. I cannot even show you the videos because, ironically, Israel is allowed to kill Gazans. Israel is allowed to lie about it, but I'm not allowed to show you what they're doing because, it's too graphic. Wow. Free speech, right? What a democracy. How am I supposed to do my job? I'm a journalist. It's my job to report. These are some of the worst human rights violations in the world, right? These are some of the worst murders and crimes in the world right now. I need to show them to you. I need you to see what is happening. It is truly gut-wrenching and awful. And I cannot do it because, it's too gory apparently, but it's not gory for them to literally, in fact, kill people. I don't know what to say. You can find these videos if you look for them, but it's really not for the faint of heart. So just absolutely horrible stuff. And the funny thing is that the Israelis their rebuttal will be like, well, this is Hamas' fault for using them as human shields. Apparently, if you sit in your house, just sitting in your house, you are a human shield for Hamas. That's funny. That's really funny. So you have no connection to Hamas. You're not even politically active. You're just sitting in your home in Gaza. You're a shield for Hamas. That's Israel's logic. You're a human shield. I mean, like, who speaks like this? Who speaks like this? Do you see how deranged this sounds? And this is what we are supporting. I think this is, like we're sending aircraft carriers and Royal Navy ships to show support for this disgusting, diabolical shit. I'm not okay with that. I think this is, this is abhorrent. It's bad enough the Israelis are doing this. This is even worse to condone that by sending ships. To do what? Go fishing? This is a political display of support. It's posturing. It's a show of force. It's intimidation. Like, who are you intimidating? Civilians? With your aircraft carrier? What is that? What are you trying to accomplish? just embarrassing us. You know, again, it's like, it's bad enough that we created Israel and now the Americans fund it. No, now we have to like still, you know, support the Israelis politically and shut our goddamn mouths and not say anything because, you know, we don't want to hurt their feelings. Go to hell, really. You know, it's not even close. It is not even close. Every single thing they say about Hamas is either a lie or something that the Israelis do themselves. Without a shadow of a doubt. Without a shadow of a doubt. They are lying to you. They're feeding you propaganda, trying to get you stirred up emotionally. So you allow them to behave like this. Just like, you know, they did this in Britain and they did this in America to brainwash people into allowing their armies to go and butcher people in Iraq or in Libya or in Syria or in Somalia and et cetera, et cetera. You know, it's never ending. Make no mistake. This is not just the Israelis' fault. This is America's fault and it's Britain's fault.